Okay, welcome again to the Troll Tribune, which is a series of interviews that I do with people that I meet while I'm, originally was while I was trolling, and in fact, I met this person, Esperanza Marquez, a few months ago, while looking at a Black nationalist website. I mean, we could probably talk a little about that later, but it was a pretty humorous conversation in retrospect. Uh, I still remember it. But Esperanza has a lot of experience with some of the topics that we're dealing with today. In fact, I have to basically, we're not going to really be talking too much about who she is or whatever, and for obvious reasons that will be made clear. Um, and we're talking about the free speech debate. We're talking about, we're still talking about the 2016 election, which has not been put to rest apparently. And we're talking about the recent events with white supremacy and the monuments issue, the Confederate monuments issue. And she's had a few experiences. They parallel to some of my experiences. Probably going to have a couple disagreements like always, but Esperanza works in public school, Maryland, has had private school teaching experience. So Esperanza, I want to start off with last year because let's go backwards. Even
Sounds good.
before our crazy conversation with certain person, a YouTuber, um, there was this election in 2016, which broke the mold for everything that I experienced going back to being a kid watching Bill Clinton get elected. And
Right.
when I was a kid, he was thought to be the greatest thing ever by my parents. But can you explain? You were a Bernie Sanders supporter. What is it? What type of hope did he give you, given your circumstances as a teacher and the state that you live in? Could you give a little background on that? How you came to support the senator?
Well, I think when you contrast Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, for me, the main issue was his record. He seemed to be consistent on domestic policy, concerned about the people. I had followed him before he decided to run for president. And I'd like had to say I like his stance on healthcare, his stance on education, especially free college for everyone. That was a huge concern of mine. I have children of my own, and having gone, have my own student loans right now that I'm still trying to pay off. Just the thought of having my children having to, deal with student loans at the college level. I mean, that was a huge attraction for me. I just felt Bernie listened to the people and really cared about the people and represented our interests, while Hillary Clinton, it was very clear that she represented the interests of corporations. If you looked at her foreign policy and even her domestic policy stances when she was first lady with her husband, I didn't feel like I could trust her. Didn't feel like she was a true Democrat, whatever that means nowadays. For me, Bernie was the real thing. He represented what the party was initially meant to be about. The people, and taking care of our interests. So that's how I became interested. That's how I became a Bernie fan.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot with people, and I think obviously the policy issues. I have my own personal feelings. I'm very much not for Bernie Sanders. I think I've explained some of those reasons to you, but
Right.
basically a lot of them are based on first of all, my philosophical differences and issues that I've had with it. Whatever uses of identity politics he does, which compared to a lot of others, he's actually better. He's not as much of an identitarian as some of the other wackos out there, but
Right.
he's actually one of the reasons I find that people would like him is I think he does take more of those risks of really going for the positions that he feels are important. whatever, there's issues with his personal finances that people can criticize or whatever, but you can't criticize him or otherwise, issues with his policies and gaps in them. But I read his book. I don't know if you have, but his book, Outsider in the House. And it does paint a portrait of somebody who has more of a commitment to those issues, especially the healthcare and the college. Would you say how active were you in the campaign? Were you like going out there and organizing and talking to people? Obviously, there was a primary in your state.
Right.
And yeah, go ahead.
So I took my children to a Bernie rally, which was I've never been to a political rally ever. And so that was a huge deal. I mean, it was a big moment. And it was a lot of fun. So I took my children to a Bernie rally. I talked to friends and family about Bernie. In fact, my dad was a huge Trump supporter from the beginning. And I even got him to the point where he said that if it was Bernie versus Trump, he would have voted Bernie. Which was, I'm disappointing that they ended up being Hillary versus Trump. But conversations with family, conversations with friends, going to a Bernie rally. I didn't do any phone calling or phone banking or anything like that, but lots of conversations online as well, talking to friends online or people that I met online about Bernie. But the big deal was mostly talking to family about Bernie and trying to get them to vote for him. That was, and then the Bernie rally. So, yeah, that was the extent of my support.
So, yeah, obviously there's commenting towards people and whatever. I mean, that's I think I can take that as for granted. I mean, that was the extent of my involvement. I think I donated to one of Bernie's.
Oh, right. Yeah. And also too.
Sorry.
Basis. Yes, I did. I signed up for like monthly donations to the Bernie campaign.
Right. And now there's this lawsuit that is going on. I think we discussed it a while back. And I am following it once in a while. There's too much news going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that you did follow up on it. But I myself, I'm a very right-leaning economically, so I was not going to donate to Bernie Sanders, but I actually did donate to one of his supported congressional candidates, Canova, who was running against. And actually, one of the funny things about politics is that sometimes you'll see somebody. I mean, I didn't meet Tim Canova because I don't live in a state, but I saw a debate with him, and despite his progressivism, his views seemed much more sane and practical than the wacko that was running against him, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Right.
Do you feel that progressives are that there's like a conflict between those that are offering like a real platform and guidelines for their positions, and some of the stuff that we've been seeing like over the weekend? Do you think that there's like a split in that respect, or do you think that it's? Sorry, go ahead.
I was thinking about that. So I was thinking about how is it that what's going on with the left right now, and I was thinking about remember when they were blaming Hillary's loss and everybody Bernie, hardcore Bernie bros, how bros didn't vote for Hillary, voted for Jill Stein, or they voted for Trump, or they in other words they were not loyal to the party, right? That they were loyal to an outsider coming in. And so I'm wondering if the people today who are the ones who are advocating for tearing down these statues, I mean, are these the Hillary supporters? Are these the Bernie supporters? Like, what is going on? What is happening within the left? That's making it. I can't figure out where people stand at all. I have no idea what the party at all. You have the extreme SJWs who are. I mean, what is BLM? Are they SJWs? I mean, what is? it's just too much, and I don't understand what's happening. We're definitely fracturing even further.
So yeah, I guess there's like an issue there where you know, and I see some of the blindness on the conservative side too, where I mean, the problem is that you have almost two countries where you know, people on the right side don't watch the left broadcasts and vice versa. I do watch a lot of left-wing creators like Tim Black and even Jimmy Dore, who I think is hilarious.
Yeah,
And
he's
and
great. Awesome.
and I think it's important, you know, sometimes in terms of, you know, let's say comedians, Louis Black, a liberal comedian, fantastic comedian who you know, very anti-Republican, but he can create like criticism with class, and some of the things that I've been seeing, which is a departure from that, is this new criticism, which you're talking about, which I think, yeah, a lot of the Hillary supporters remember during the campaign, there was a remark, she was caught on tape, Secretary Clinton, saying that a lot of the Bernie supporters were basement dwellers who hadn't gotten jobs. And I thought, you know, okay, you want to talk a little trash, but it's just incorrect because, you know, there are a lot of Bernie supporters that I could say that's true, but there were plenty of rural Bernie supporters, you know, farm owners, stuff like that, and it's real. You know, you have to at least try to make a appeal to the people that are opposing you within your own party, if not for the whole country. And she didn't do that. Did you feel once he bowed out? Remember, this was in July. Did you feel that your vote was taken for granted by the rest of the party?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was like, when he decided. I'm sorry, that's my daughter in the back. Once he decided to, well, okay, when he stepped out, for me, it wasn't even when it wasn't the moment when he stepped out. It was the moment when he endorsed Hillary. I don't know if you remember that moment, but the look on his face, the expression on his face, did not indicate any type of. He did not show any enthusiasm. There was no heart behind his decision to endorse Hillary Clinton. And that for me was when I felt betrayed by the party, when I felt betrayed by Bernie, and when I felt that definitely that my vote did not matter any longer. That not even that I was being taken advantage of or that I was taken for granted in any type of way. That I did not matter. That it was being forced upon me, her, you know, eventual nomination. Like, you know, there was just, I mean, it was, you know, when California happened and he lost that primary, and which seemed to be very shady. I basically was like, okay, that's it, it's done. So I mean, it wasn't even a feeling of being taken for granted. It was like I didn't even matter anymore. You know, I didn't even matter anymore. What was interesting to me was when, I mean, because I had coworkers who were huge Bernie fans supposedly, and the minute he endorsed Hillary, it was done. They were with her, and I didn't understand that. I didn't understand. It was more when I decided to go for Bernie. It was more about what I wanted American politics to look like. Finally, what I wanted the presidency to look like. And he represented a significant change from what was typically going on in Washington, which is why I didn't understand. I didn't get that. That's why I say I don't even feel like I was taken for granted. I felt like I was like I don't want to say the dream, but the expectation, the hope, the future that I was hoping for my children was just it was just all a lie, you know. And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why people could just how can you go from Bernie, who was someone who was sincere, to a straight up like consistent liar, you know, and Hillary. It was just it was weird to me. I didn't get it. So no, I mean it wasn't even about being taken advantage of or feeling taken for granted or anything like that. It was just that was it. It was all a lie.
Yeah, I think I had a slightly different experience because I was a very strong Rand Paul supporter. I still would take Rand Paul over any of the other people. Even Donald Trump, I've kind of come around to a number of the Trump policies. There's other ones like his Treasury Secretary and Secretary of State that I I don't know why I would support these people, but
Right.
you know, but it did take me a long time to, you know, admit that some of his ideas were, you know, even okay, because they just didn't seem like they were either important or that they were even smart. But I think
Right.
he's redeemed himself in a couple ways. Um, you know, and it's very polarizing. I mean, I can speak from, and you could probably, we're going to get into that with your place of business, but when I go to work, I don't feel that I can speak my mind in terms of, you know, the fact that I want to support certain policies. You know, there's certain things in Trump's personality I think are, you know, funny, or you know, that I support, and then there's things that I don't like, and
Right.
instead it has to be either hot or cold, or you know, positive or negative on the, you know, polarity.
Right.
And I don't feel comfortable with it. I actually left the you know, the lunchroom today. I went and ate out because they started talking about it.
Right.
What I was gonna say, you know, and this isn't really a question. It's kind of that piece I sent you earlier, which was
Mm-hmm.
very bizarre. Um, was this woman? She said, "I studied the all right, so you don't have to." Now,
Right.
I
Right.
did I did
Right.
find out later that she did say that kind of ironically, or write that
Mm-hmm.
ironically, but she said some of the same language that was used against Bernie and Trump supporters. She said, for example, this patriot prayer recruits from across the conservative spectrum. As you might correctly guess, there were a fair share of corn-fed chads in MAGA hats at the rally yesterday. That reminds me of the Bernie bro slur that they were saying. And then she actually did bring it up. Let me see here. She brought up the word, the inclusiveness of Kekistan and groups like Patriot Prayer work two ways. First, it lures people who might not have been traditionally part of the GOP out of their mom's basement into the welcoming bosom of far-right causes. So, given
Right.
given that type of reference, I think yes, some of these people are Hillary supporters masquerading as, you know, I don't know if you'd call them bona fide progressives, but um, yeah, I think there's definitely an issue where Hillary people or Obama people are masquerading as principled progressives here. Um,
Yes. 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 I know. What was funny about that article, I don't know if you're going to talk about that at any point. What was funny to me about that article, at first I felt that she was being genuine. And then as you continued going, this is like a smear piece against the alt right. Because it's funny, I follow, all right, so on my Facebook feed, I have a variety of people, right? So sometimes I'll listen to Jimmy Dore. I like Lee Camp. I think he's funny. But then I also read Milo and Breitbart and Paul Joseph Watson, so I'm all over the place. I like getting my news from BBC, and Daryl will pop up every while too. Vice News. So I get my news from everywhere already. And so, but what's funny is that according to her piece, I would be a member of the alt right. You know, I would, because I identified there were some issues where I would agree with Trump, the quote unquote Muslim ban, or issues on immigration, for example. Um, some of those things. I mean, that would mean that I'm alt right. Whatever. I don't like how transgenderism is becoming an issue in this country. Like, what is that about? Um, Not to say that they don't have the right to be who they are. They can be whoever they want to be. I really personally don't care. So why is this an issue? So a lot of those, yes, my baby's in the room. So a lot of those things, because of where I stand on those topics, I would be considered alt right according to her. And I would be considered a Nazi sympathizer, which is outrageous to me. It's just, no, I'm not. I'm not a member of a hate group. I don't hate people at all. In fact, it hurts me to see that this country is, divided the way it is, and politically divided now through violence, which
Hello?
is outsane. I don't know. It was a weird article to me. And it goes to show, you're right, you cannot speak freely in this country. If you do not follow the left on every single one of their issues, on every single one of their points, whatever their stances might be, you are now a member of a hate group. You are now a Nazi because you believe in free speech or whatever the issue is. It's gotten, they're forcing dichotomies, they're forcing polarities, as you said. You cannot speak freely at work at all. I mean, after Trump won, I basically, my yes is broken. After Trump won, basically that was it. I could not speak anymore. I had to keep my at work. It would turn into all out arguments, and I'm not in the mood. I can't be getting into that at work. So yeah, I mean, the situation is just out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that it's a real problem because there's a lot of points where, I did give criticism of Donald Trump, during the Syria crisis. And, it was just practical criticism, just practical. Right. Now, I'm not saying, you're a warmongering Hitler, Donald Trump. I'm just saying, this is a bad idea. I even presented like a different idea. Now, I didn't have any viewership, but that's not the point. The point is that, if you make everything into like hyperbole and exaggeration, then legitimate or practical criticism doesn't even get any attention.
Right.
And that's why, like, I like to say, like, what you're saying is very funny that Bernie supporter like Esperanza says that, because there's a creator out there, and we'll get to somebody similar to him. We can't mention him by name because it would be too specific. But Tariq Nasheed, for example, which is a similar guy, he labels anybody that disagrees with him an SWS, a suspected white supremacist, or a WS, just a white supremacist. And I'm segueing to the next topic. We were speaking, this is how I actually met Esperanza, in terms of like, communicating. There was a guy who he started saying, I believe it was after the movie Get Out was released in theaters. He started talking shit about, do you need me to stop cussing? Because I know there's like kids around. So.
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
That's okay. So yeah, I'm used to like just saying whatever. But anyway, there's this guy. He started talking smack about white women. And this is a black individual, a very well-educated black individual. And I said, you know what? I've seen your academic profile page at a certain university in a certain state between South Carolina and Alabama. and I noticed that you're married to a white woman. So why don't you get a divorce? And he dodged the topic, and we got into, I remember.
Not even dodge the topic. He doesn't even up at all. Like if you shot him out about it, he disappears. He disappears from the conversation.
The funniest thing he said, I remember. I don't know if you remember this. It was like bizarre. I don't know if disturbing, but it was bizarre. He said that his wife behaves in the exact way that a white woman should behave in his mind, and I said, that might be first of all, if you're like, because he considers himself a feminist, I said, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
What are you talking? I mean, literally, what are you? It's almost like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy talking to that guy. And then, I guess these aren't questions. It's almost like just a reminiscence.
Right.
But what was the thing that you were asking him stuff, and then he was saying, what was he saying about you? I mean, I kind of forgot his angle, but it had something to do about like. Sorry, I got some feedback in my ear.
I just remember those conversations being mostly where I would say, why are you married to a white woman if this is how you feel about the black community? Shouldn't you be married to a black woman? Shouldn't you be upbuilt? And the thing is, a lot of the positions the reason why I was asking him a lot of those questions about his white wife is because within the black community, it would be considered outrageous on the part of black women that you had this highly educated man, basically who's turned away from from his people. I mean, this is how, I mean, maybe I shouldn't speak for Black women. I don't know. But I belong to a lot of these Black women empowerment pages on Facebook, just because I like a lot of what they say about, you know, staying positive and how to find a good partner and, you know, being career focused and blah, blah, blah. You know, I do a lot. I do like a lot of their messages. But when they speak about, especially educated Black men, he was like a perfect example of the type of guy that they're talking about, who the minute they reach a certain position within society, boom, they get the white woman. And he hated that I would bring that up. I mean, he wouldn't even touch it. I mean, he would disappear. And then other women, you know, I mean, I would get pounded on by other people on his comments. But yeah, it was just his positions on white women and, you know, how they're like a big part of the white patriarchy, and they also, you know, enforce white supremacy and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was just, I just found it to be, like you said, bizarre, considering that he's married to a white woman. I don't know, it was just weird.
It's very similar. This weekend they were talking about one of the alt-right people, the guy, I think he runs the Daily Stormer, who's a neo-Nazi who was married to a Jewish woman, and he at least had the courtesy to divorce her. But you know, I mean, just you know, keep it real. But the other funny thing was that on his show, which I used to watch, and in fact I think I have to cancel my PayPal because I was contributing like $3 a month to their show, just because the other person on this show is actually very, very intelligent, sometimes a very perceptive lady who, you know, we will not name because I obviously don't want to get sorry.
Then it'll be obvious.
Right. You know, I'm not trying. What we're trying to do here for the viewers who will watch later is toe the line between, you know, 1984 and basically the Breakfast Club. You know, like tell some funny stories, but then we can't even talk about who these people are because, you know, what. And by the way, the people we're talking about get flagged all the time too, so it's a two-way street.
Oh, definitely, yeah. You
yeah.
know what? That was when he talked about, you know, white genocide might have to happen. I was like, well, alrighty then. So then maybe some white people, what did he say? He was like, yeah, white genocide may have to happen. We may have to kill white folk. I was like, okay, all right. So this needs to be flagged. Everybody else is getting flagged for their BS. I'm going to submit this to be flagged. And I did. You know, I felt a little bit hypocritical about it because I don't think that's what people should be doing. But F it. At that point, I was like, this guy's out of control and he needs to be put in his place. Everybody else is being shouted out.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I would have. I mean, I don't even know. Sometimes I'm tempted to do stuff like that, but then it's like, why even let this? I mean, it's easier just to let this guy, you know, dig his. First of all, he does tremendous damage to his own cause.
Right.
One of the things that they do on that show, which I'm a little, you know, ambivalent about, is they kind of they attack the Hispanic community and other minority communities because they think that they detract from the priorities of the Black community, right. which sometimes it makes a little sense, but they're overly aggressive about it. Yeah. And I remember during that chat, a lot of his followers were taking the cues and attacking you because even though you're not, you know, a, what do you call, African American woman, you're a woman. I mean, what descent would you say that you are? Without revealing.
I consider myself a woman of color because that's what this country considers me to be.
But you're from, you know, Latin America, right?
Yeah, I'm from a Caribbean country. Yes.
Yes. So.
A Spanish-speaking Caribbean country.
Exactly. And in their minds, and it's the same thing. There was a baseball player named Torrey Hunter, who otherwise I think is like a pretty intelligent guy, but he said once, you know, these. You know, when asked about the declining number of Black people in Major League Baseball, he said, well, yeah, they're edging us out. And somebody asked him, well, what about all the Venezuelan and Puerto Rican and Mexican and all these other Latin American athletes? Well, he said, well, those are imposters. They're not really Black people. And never got suspended for it. Nothing ever happened. I think he had to issue like a mild apology or something.
Right.
And I think it's a very sad issue where, on the one hand, you have constant flagging of people, public people. Curt Schilling got fired from, and if we're just talking about sports, I mean, you could probably talk
Right.
about in whatever interest that you have, and
Right.
I can presume you do care about sports a little. I'm not going to be
I'm okay. You can talk about sports.
gender assuming. No, I don't want to assume because you're not a male that you don't like sports, but
I love sports. I just don't
so,
follow it as much as I used to. So, but
so you might
you
remember,
can
I
talk
think it was
about it.
last year, Curt Schilling got fired from ESPN for saying a couple things that were perceived as, or he shared a meme that was considered transphobic. He got fired for it right away. Meanwhile, there's other guys. Stephen A. Smith hangs out with Floyd Mayweather, who is a wife beater, and he's the most popular person on ESPN. So, I think that double standard is pretty clear. Let's
Right.
talk. Let's talk a little now. Getting back to the subject. So, since the election,
Right.
obviously you can't talk about it as publicly as you would like, but has your impression of the candidate you're supported or the political landscape shifted a lot?
Oh my goodness. I actually feel like I've become more conservative.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. And I, first of all, I don't follow Bernie anymore. It's hard for me to listen to anything that he has to say or read whatever he posts or tweets or whatever. It's, to say that I feel betrayed is mild. Bernie for me is, I don't want to say dead, but almost a lost cause. So, and I guess because of the hysteria on the left when Trump won, it was such a huge turnoff that it honestly pushed me to seriously reconsider my political beliefs, my ideological stance on many issues. So, for example, I've actually reconsidered my thoughts on abortion, like what I think about abortion. I've reconsidered my position on, the minimum wage. I've reconsidered, my position on, immigration, for example. And I feel like I've become more conservative since the election. But honestly, what pushed me that way was the hysteria, like literally the oh my God, Trump is literally Hitler. I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I can't be a part of this nonsense. I need to be more reasonable, rational, logical. I need to think my way through what I believe and no longer be based on emotion. So yes, I mean I don't even follow Bernie anymore. It's hard for me to follow anybody on the left now. I do listen to what they say, just because I want to make sure that I understand all positions, but I'm not necessarily a follower any longer.
Yeah, I would say that since the election for me, it's been kind of a daily. I didn't think I'd be involved in commentating much. And it's not my job. I have a day job, 9 to 5. You have a day job too, but
right.
What's happened with me has been kind of I've given up a lot of things that I used to enjoy because I don't enjoy them anymore. Because it's almost like you have this constant battle to as being somebody that's on the conservative side, even a Rand Paul supporter. I have to combat a lot of this disinformation.
Right.
And when I want to speak about an issue that I think is really important to me, even people on the right don't really care because it's all about the Donald Trump issue on both sides. And for me, when first, for example, I'm a very huge I wouldn't say like I'm a wonk, like I'm not like authoritative, but I've gotten very deep into the issue of Obamacare and the health insurance issue and some other alternative solutions that need to be explored. And I'm an opponent of universal health care. And then I try to find people that would be able to discuss that with me, like supporters of it, and they just don't want to. They say, well, I support universal health care, but I don't feel confident that I'd be able to explain why it's the preferred system. Or, alternatively, even more egregiously, by the way, I have never found a single person besides a person that I worked with at my previous job from Colombia who could explain to me, let alone defend Obamacare. So that's my experience.
Right. I mean, when it comes to, I honestly cannot speak on it. It seems so convoluted. Obamacare. When I try to sit down and think about it and go over it seems super hyper complicated. I really can't speak on it. The issue of universal health care, and what Bernie was pushing for, I mean, he kept on, pointing to the examples of, how it works in several countries in Europe. And when I thought about it in that sense, and, I've been to Europe several times, it seemed like it made sense to me. I like the idea of it. But I don't know enough of the details to be able to speak on that.
Yeah, that's I mean, and I don't blame, because there's a lot of people on the conservative side, by the way, that are opposed to those, but they can't explain why either. So right. It's really like it's easy to be sanctimonious about it, but in my opinion, I've tried to put out videos out there. I have a video, I think, from last week or the week before for a half hour, reacting to Tim Black, if you know who that is, talking about universal health care and Obamacare, because he was trying to help the Obamacare, prevent Obamacare from being repealed. I actually made the case. It's a very strong case. I'll share it with you someday, maybe after the video, after we're done, where I said, those progressives that support Obamacare and are in reality supportive of universal health care are actually undermining their own cause, because it is in reality corporate welfare where the government is handing huge sums of money to insurance companies in order to give them unaffordable health care. And that's not to distract from our main conversation. Right. I felt that was an important point to make for progressives, even though I'm kind of the contrary to a progressive. I'm a full-on dirty capitalist, if you want to call it that. But there's so let's shift gears now. Talk a little more about issues of the education system. Obviously, the education system is we're seeing a lot of issues now with Betsy DeVos, the new, not so new now, the education secretary. Not to put you on the spot, this wasn't part of what we discussed earlier. Do you feel that the reception of her on the part of the education industry has been fair, or has it been a little exaggerated?
I don't feel like it's been exaggerated at all. I mean, the woman has no experience whatsoever with public education. I mean, she went to a private school her entire life, went to a private university. Her children have never attended public schools either. I mean, it's just she has no experience from either the student or even teacher side. I mean, it's just, it's mind-boggling to me that someone who, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. So for the unions to speak out against her, and for teachers to be completely outraged that this woman is running the department when she's never even had anything to do with education, public education, I would definitely in line with them on that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the other argument. If I just counterpoint, it's kind of a funny counterpoint because it doesn't make sense. But there's the whole outsider thing where they say, oh, well, the people that have been in the system have screwed it up, so we're going to bring in somebody who's from outside of the system to set set it right. But
Right.
I'm kind of hanging back. There were a couple people that I thought, and I'm pro school choice. But I think that there
Okay.
were other candidates that were, more capable of managing that, uh, that viewpoint than Betsy DeVos, who I
Right.
thought was a strange choice, and may prove to be a bad choice. But she's far from my least favorite cabinet pick. I mean, that would probably be Rex Tillerson.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the guy is not worth much. Maybe he's doing something that we don't know about, but whatever.
Right.
Um, so, how long have you been teaching? If you want to give like a general idea, I don't know how specific you can get. And
Right. So I actually have been in education for a really long time. Started out teaching at a private school, an elementary private school in a metropolitan area, and then left that after becoming department chair to work at a preschool, and worked at the preschool for a few years. Started up my own little preschool language business. So basically offering language classes at different preschools in the area. That was a lot of fun. I did that for a couple of years as well, or several years. And I continued doing that while I got my master's in education. And then finally, after going through all of those steps to get my master's, and the reason why I got my master's is because I had always intended to teach in a public school. I mean, I loved my time teaching at a private school, and I don't want to say, I don't want to say that I regret that I left, but I look at those years very fondly. But my entire intention when I went into education was to work at a public school. So once I finally got my master's, I was finally hired to teach at a public school, or the public school system. Yeah, so I mean, I've been in education for quite some time now, maybe 20 years. Yeah, almost 20, almost, not exactly 20, but almost 20 years from preschool all the way up until high school.
yeah, it feels funny like broaching that topic because you're talking to somebody who I could not wait to not be in a classroom. I did go to college for up to master's study, but that's obviously a different paradigm as
Right,
opposed to
right,
grade
right.
school. But in grade school, I could not. I would cut school all the time. I was always the kid. I could not stand, probably 75% of teachers. I was always the kid who was like, profanity, smart, talking.
Right,
Even if it was a subject I liked, I was like contrarian. There's a few exceptions, but
right,
it's very strange because I'm living now a different life. I'm an engineering professional now, and I was just talking to a gentleman today who was a high ranking person in my company. We're a small company, so I'm not going to even say. I don't even talk about my job on here. So I mean,
right,
we're in the same boat. Or even what industry it is. But we were talking, and he said, and I asked him, I mean, school's coming up. I know you have a kid who's going to school, downstate.
right.
Um, what's and I didn't even broach the topic, but looking ahead towards the university, you might have some kids going to the university. Are you concerned about what type of education they are going to get, whether they're going to be prepared for life or for whatever reason?
My children are my students.
Hmm.
From what point of view you want me to answer from? As a teacher talking about her students, or
Well,
as a
you could
teacher
talk
talking about
about
her
both
students?
either your personal life or your kids at school. You
Um,
know.
okay, so because I am on top of my own kids, I'm not really too worried about whether or not they will be prepared. I'm already talking to my oldest about, what possible majors she could go into college. And then I'm, already talking to my middle child who is 9 years old about what her interest might be, trying to figure out where I can guide her to, because I'm not as familiar with her interests. So I need to start investigating those now, researching those now. Um, So in terms of my own kids, I feel prepared because of the type of parent that I am. Now, as a teacher, uh, do I feel that our education system prepares our students as a whole? I am doubtful of that. I mean, we hear reports from the local college, like community college, that a lot of our students end up having to take remedial courses in English and in math because they're not even able to pass the placement test into community college, introductory courses, for example, like your standard English 101 or whatever. Um, so it's been a big push, especially last year. We had a huge push towards college readiness in our school, making sure that our students are, when we say college readiness, we really mean community college ready, um, not necessarily the university level, at least at my school. Um, which I think university and community college are two different things, like the standards that are expected. So I mean, I don't feel that way. I mean, I have students. So I taught uh, honors level. I taught uh, English language learners, and I also taught, the what they call, your on level class, which is just your average student. And the even in the honors class, I mean, I had students who were true honors, but then I had students that just because they behaved well were in the honors class, and but they still couldn't write. They really couldn't read. It was just because their behavior was on point. They, respected their teachers or respected authority or knew how to stay quiet, that they were in the honors class. I mean, it was really outrageous. And then I had what the level that I was teaching my English language learners was actually what I was also the same work I was also giving to my on level students. And the on level students are students who have been born and raised in this country, who even still needed basic English language sentences in order to complete reading assignments. I'm talking about high school. I'm not talking about elementary school. I'm talking about high school students who at the regular class are given like basic reading assignments. This is what's expected of them. Um, it really is. I don't even like to word I don't like to use the word outrageous anymore. It's honestly, it could be very depressing and very sad. I got to the point where when we gave out our required unit test, I would read the questions out loud. I would read the reading sections out loud to make sure that everyone was on the same page. All right. This is for the regular on level courses. And I did it also for my English language learners. But the thing is that that's considered standard for the English language learner courses, not for the on level course. So um, I had to lower my standards for the on level courses, which is, it's sad to me. But once again, that's a statement on our education system. Right now we don't look at necessarily providing equality of opportunity. Now we are thinking about equity, right? So I don't know if you've seen that illustration where they have three students trying to look over a fence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep.
You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so now we're talking about equity, so that we have to provide all of these, uh, what do we call that in education? All of these extra boosts basically for the students who are falling behind. Meanwhile, our students who are in the honors classes they just get they get whatever, or if you're an above par student, it's sorry, too bad, it's hard, it's you get whatever we can give you. It's just so odd. So we're not pushing our best and our brightest. We're not pushing them. We're not pushing the students who are, showing extra effort. We are just trying to prop up the weakest ones. I don't I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of that. And I feel like it's lowering standards
Yeah,
instead of raising standards.
if I can interject,
Go ahead.
this was, I mean, I do remember it because I hated going to school so much, but I loved reading. Um, I did, and by the way, I didn't start out as a science and math, you know, major or anything. I was more into a lot of the topics like what we're doing right now, and eventually, you know, out of practical reasons, I went to STEM field. Um, you know, there's a book I read back in the early 2000s by a man named Herman Badillo, who was a Puerto Rican.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned him to you, but he was the superintendent of New York City schools, I believe. And, he was one of the people that started the movement back in the 70s to make City University of New York an open admission college. Um, and years later, he realized that it was a tremendous mistake. It ruined the system because a lot of the individuals that were now qualified by default to get into CUNY, which at one point was one of the best public colleges in the U.S., a lot of those people were
Yes.
simply.
You know who went there? What's his face? Colin Powell.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But Badillo, he later recanted his whole premise that open admission was good. He said it basically ruined the college. It brought the standards down because they had to start instituting remedial classes. And Nowadays you have that on a national level. I mean, I don't think that Badillo was unique in that campaign, but I believe in the California public college system, they're about to drop the algebra requirement. Um,
Yep.
they're
Yeah.
they're seriously like considering it, and I think it might have already been approved. And that would be just it would really, if you're talking about equity, that doesn't create equity because I can tell you from experience, the people that will end up going to these STEM fields, and they've only started calling it STEM fields because they want to dumb it down. Um, the people that will go into it that are going to be the real achievers are the people from India and China that have the ambition and competitive spirit that are necessary to succeed there. And I know from the college that I went to that I can tell you that over 60% of the students are from overseas, and the local ones are not from minority communities. They're from a lot of the Roman Catholic schools. Um, at least in my city, probably elsewhere too. And that's just the STEM fields, by the way. But those are very critical, and they include medicine. So I guess you're talking about these humanities degrees there are almost no standards sometimes, and you get something like the piece I was reading earlier. Uh, so let me see here. Do you believe in that school choice is or is not the reason there is public school decay in the U.S.? Um, and we could discuss, there's certain public school systems in your area or, across the United States. I can speak personally that the public school system that I went to has gone down probably like by a large margin since I went there.
Because of school choice or just in general?
No, it's gone down. It has nothing to do with school choice in that case.
So I don't know. I mean, okay. So I went to public school here in New York City when the public schools in New York City were still really good. I was part of the gifted and talented program growing up. Identified basically in kindergarten to be a part of the program. And I really felt like that program prepared me, or just really did a good job of instilling in me a love of knowledge, a love of education. Okay, which I think is what should be at the core of any good school system. All right, is loving to learn, right? Teaching your students to love to learn. From there,
You can figure out whatever you want to be. It really isn't an issue as long as you love learning. I really, truly, honestly believe that. Okay. Um, so, it's kind of hard for me to see the public school system now. I don't understand. When I look at, for example, New York City public schools, and when they, like the Harlem area, I forget the name of the Harlem school zone, uh, where they have school choice. They seem to be doing really well. Like they really go talk to Mima. I'm sorry, my daughter just spilled all this liquid on her. Go talk to Mima. Mima can help you. They seem to be doing really well in DC. It seems also, those schools, but then they say the counterpoint to that, the school choice, is that, well, oh, it's always the best kids that leave the public schools and go into these schools with the voucher programs or into the charter schools. So they're actually picking out the best students and leaving the state with students who are already difficult to serve with less money because there aren't as many students in the public school system. So it's really complicated for me. I mean, I don't really know what to think about school choice because of that. I don't know if it's improved public education. I think that it's given parents a valid uh, a, a valid option depending on where. So, like in DC, I think I would, if I lived in DC, I think I would look to put my kid at a charter school. If I lived in New York City, I would definitely push for my children to go to a charter school. I would, I would. Um, the, that basically tells me that our public education system has gone to crap. I don't know why that is. Um, I mean, I could speculate, but I
So
think education better. I don't know. I really just don't know. I don't know.
I can give some just some commentary on it because I'm not a teacher and I don't go to school anymore. But based on my research and what's been going on in my area too. Um, so I'll give a point and a counterpoint to charter schools. One of the counterpoints, to get that out of the way, is that in some states, in my state, they aren't as accountable as they should be, and some of them are kind of fly by night. I spoke to a teacher. I actually went on a blind date with a teacher once, which I never thought I'd say that, but she said that yeah, some of the charter schools that she's worked for are almost just holding pens for kids, um, which I was definitely discouraged by that news because I believe in school choice as a general principle. But um, I'll tell you this: one of the reasons that it is such a hot topic that a lot of people are calling for. I know in Tennessee it's really popular through people that I've talked to and articles that I've seen. Um, is that with public schools, inevitably, if you go into a larger area, you have much higher administrative and labor costs, and also regulations on the facilities and on the content being provided, the education being provided, and it creates a system that's very large and very expensive and very it's not elastic to change. It can't really adapt to conditions where they need to for example cut staff in a certain area when there's a shortage of resources, and you get these battles in the local ballot issues. In my district alone, there's a levy every year, and people get tired of it, and they say, well, we think that there's somebody that can do it better. It could be a charter school, B, giving a voucher to a private school, let's say, which may not even cover the whole cost of it. And then there's the Catholic school networks, which in some cities are almost they're like a real alternative. Some people, and I'm not Catholic, so I can't speak for this. I went to a Jewish school for a few years that was actually pretty bad. didn't really do much, but people I believe they do want an alternative sometimes when they find the system they're in to be inefficient. And you know, you can take a philosophical issue, whether, you know, some people like me see it as a capitalism versus socialism issue, but you know, in reality, you can't leave a charter school to its own devices and just make up whatever it wants, because sometimes they'll try to, you know, just take advantage of people. That's what I think about it.
Right.
Here's a sensitive question. What is your view on the influx of illegal immigrant students into the public school system?
Yeah. All right. So I want to say, I think it's important for me to say up front that um, my personality is one of an empath, okay? So basically, I have a bleeding heart, but I'm not a bleeding heart liberal. So what I mean by that is, you know, when it comes to when I hear people's experiences crossing the border or coming into this country and what their experiences in their home country were and why they chose to come here and, you know, how hard they work and the sacrifices that their families have to make to get here, you know, it makes me as a teacher want to provide them the best that I can to them to make so that they can become a success, whatever success is in their minds, right? If success is holding down a good job, you know, to send money back home, you know, to their home country, or if success is, you know, going to college and you know, establishing a career, whatever success is, you know, um, I feel like when I hear those stories, I want to be the best teacher possible. However, it is, it really just, it, the amount of resources that it takes to educate these children who come from countries where sometimes they may not have even gone to school. You know, they may have only gone to school to second grade, or they've had an interrupted education. Um, the resources that it takes to help them to graduate, you know, we are held to certain standards, for example, and and we consistently do not meet those standards because of the number of illegal immigrants that we have in this country. In our school? How does that work? Well, we're supposed to be graduating everyone within 4 years. Now, if you are an ESOL student, for example, for some reason, by law, you have up until the age of 21 to graduate high school. So they could stay for an extended period of time in the public school system. You know, now they can fail their classes a number of times. You know, they don't. It's not like one strike you fail, two strikes you fail, three strikes you're out. No, you can repeat courses up until finally you age out of the system. You can be a ninth grader the entire time you're in high school. Okay. A lot of these schools a lot of these kids come to the school because they want free breakfast and free lunch. We also provide what we call supper at the end of the day, which is basically whatever was left over for lunch, they give it out for free.
Oh wow, that sounds awful.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's. I don't think it's good for the kids who are on teams. It's good for the kids who have to pick up their baby brother or sister from, you know, the school down the street or up the block or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you know, our ESOL department is one of the largest departments um, in the county. I'm talking about my specific school because of, you know, how many students we have. I mean, it's just, it's just the number of resources that it takes to help these students succeed is overwhelming, you know. And I don't know if I'm being messed up about this, okay? But I think about back when my parents came to this country, right? Not necessarily the situation with my parents, but that time period when they came in the 60s and the 70s, okay? When they came, if you didn't speak English and you tried to go to school, you had to graduate with everybody else. And if you didn't graduate, then you got a job, you know? If you were 19 or 20 years old, you were not placed in a public school. You were expected to go out and find a job. And if you wanted to learn English, you would learn English in the basement of a church. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
it was look, your local community that would help, that would provide services to you, not your public school. Now it's become that the public schools are now community centers. You know, we are the ones who are providing, like, we provide free healthcare at our school to everyone in the community who asks for it. We provide, you know, basically free English classes for students who come in at the age of 18, 17, 18 years old. You know, you could be 18 and be a ninth grader. It's crazy. So, I mean, I don't know what's right and what's wrong. You know, I don't know I don't know. It's difficult, you know?
I think you're talking about a problem that is even, and I didn't expect it to go so much in that direction in terms of, you know, just, you know, how many services you are providing, which is a little surprising to me, because maybe I haven't been paying attention, but you know, I think we're getting to a point where the school is expected to substitute for the home and the surrounding community, whatever you want to call it. Similar to the, you know, this is a different book by her, but Hillary Rodham Clinton, if you can see, she had It Takes a Village. She, you know, they have a belief system. I would say that, yes, the state should be kind of moral and, you know, societal guide for the people that are its, you know, subscribers. I don't know what to use the word, and that would include, and in the case of illegal immigrants, and sometimes just saying illegal immigrants, obviously in the climate today, because Trump, it's hilarious when he says, he does this stupid thing, criminal illegal immigrants, like he's Dr. Evil, or he's like, you know,
Right.
pitching Clorox bleach or something. He's still pitching products, which I think is it's a little cartoonish and weird. But the issue with illegal immigration, like you said, is we're getting, and it's a similar topic with healthcare in general. But when you have uncapped costs, and with illegal immigration, you could potentially have it. And it's not just with Mexico. You could have, you know, tons of Haitian people coming here, people from I mean, let's pick a country. Venezuela. I've been talking to a number of Venezuelans. There will be a wave of Venezuelan refugees here in the future, I believe. Those costs are just uncapped, and I think it does detract from the system. And you know, I think that this is one area where the president kind of he took me by surprise. I think he had a good finger on the pulse of a lot of people, that they see that, you know, they're paying for all these resources, and the people that are put out by these schools, I don't think that they're really, first of all, they're not being prepared for careers anyway. And that would include the illegal immigrant children. Therefore, we do get this chaos in the communities. And remember, I mean, I'm not going to go too far into detail, but the MS-13 issue that Trump is talking about, when you have concentrations of large groups of people from a different society that are just, you know, in the same space, then they will often feature some of the same issues that they had in their home country. It's inevitable, and it's
societies, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they recreate their societies in their new home country. Yeah.
Right, and I don't think, you know, you don't even have to be judgmental about it. It's just the way that, you know, my mom, like your mom, was an immigrant. And she did socialize with a number of people from her country, which was Israel.
Right.
But she's Iraqi Israeli, so there weren't that many Iraqi people around here, but there were other people that were Israeli. But she made a major effort for a number of years to learn English better. Didn't quite make it there, but I remember she used to carry around like a book about Harry Truman for some reason. I don't know why she picked Harry Truman. She just read it, I don't know. I don't think she was interested in nukes or anything, but
Right.
yeah, I think we've departed from that value where people come here and they want to take from our ideas. They're kind of here to take a lot of our resources, and we've been encouraging it. It's just the wrong attitude, in my opinion.
And they come, and a lot of them don't. What I'm saying is not necessarily an appreciation. It's almost like, well, you have to give me this. You have to, you owe me respect. Is the new attitude now? Well, you owe me this. I'm like, excuse me, I don't owe you anything. You earn what you receive. You earn that. So it's definitely a shift, right? Where people, I think, during my dad's time, during my parents' time, felt like, whatever they wanted, they had to fight for it. They had to earn it. And now I feel like there's a shift where, if you come to this country, we owe them certain things. Like we owe them healthcare. We owe them an education. We owe them, the just learning English, for example. It's like, no, you need to, or we owe them a job. It's very, at least the children have this attitude from what I've noticed in my school. It's a little disconcerting. I don't know what to make of it. But right, I do agree. I don't understand the logic, but well, I shouldn't say I don't understand the logic. We discussed this in my grad school classes a lot. The idea of the school being the center of the community, where the school provides a number of resources for the community as a way to combat poverty, the issues that come up with poverty. So, and that's the model that is that my school is functioning under right now.
Well, believe it or not, I mean, some of the left-wing media sources that I kind of browse and I'll do commentary videos on them. One of them is The Real News, and I don't think they're the only one. They believe that closing failed public schools, or even almost empty public schools, they think of it as some sort of corporate takeover of education. And they do see it that way, in the strictest sense that these schools are community centers. And I'd have to say that I wholeheartedly disagree, but because for me, school was kind of this place where I'd climb out the window and run away. But that's just me. I got a number of other questions, even though I want to move topics soon. I don't know if I'm going to ask all of them, but here's one important one. Do you think that multicultural values in education have so far succeeded in creating better harmony between racial groups or otherwise?
It's interesting. When I first started taking my grad school classes, I was a big proponent of multiculturalism and making sure that we included different narratives in the curriculum, like giving an opportunity to minority groups to be represented in the curriculum one way or another, so like if it were math, emphasizing the Islamic contribution to math, for example. If it's social studies, making sure that the Black contribution during World War II was recognized, like the Tuskegee Airmen and all that. So I was a big proponent of that, and I still do believe in that. The problem that I have with it, however, is what I'm seeing going on, or what I saw go on last year in my class after Trump won. I had a number of students tell me, like I shouldn't say a number. I would say like maybe 2 or 3 students tell me,
outright in front of the rest of their class that, you know, it was time to go after whites for everything that they did. So we went from a curriculum where we included different voices to make sure that they were represented to one where it felt like we were attacking whites. Like I became like I just started feeling uncomfortable with the way topics, the way I was told to present certain topics, right? So in learning about the civil rights movement, okay, mama. When learning about the civil rights movement, I didn't really emphasize white allies so much in the beginning. You know, my first year or so, my first few years. Now I feel like I have to make a point of mentioning white allies during the civil rights movement so that it's understood that not all whites were racist. You know, like that's not
Hashtag, you know, not all.
Right, not all. You know, I mean, it's well, the thing is that there is this assumption that if you are white, you are racist. If you are white, you are a white supremacist. You know, so I mean, there for some reason there is this assumption, and it's the problem that I'm having is that we're not when we teach this it went from multiculturalism to now we're not identifying the proper questions for students to investigate, for students to research. You know, it shouldn't be an issue of race. I feel like it should be a question of power. How is power exercised? You know, how is power abused? You know, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like? You know, how do people try to gain power within a society, within a country? I think those are the types of discussions that we should be having in school, not necessarily ones based on race, as if power is only centered on race. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle, and you know, the whole power dynamic thing. I mean, we don't learn Machiavelli in school,
No.
which that'll be an interesting experience. I don't know if it's really you know, the only book you would talk about, but you know, my personal take on it, coming as somebody, I guess technically I'm white, but people tell me I'm not, because I'm half Ukrainian and half Iraqi, so I don't know what the hell it is. So I'd say my race is hairy or something.
Right.
You know, there's like, or you know, I'll like one time I wrote down, you know, other, and then there's a line, and I'd put like alcoholic or something, and it's really an issue where I don't care anymore about you know, I do sometimes, you know, take an interest in some of these topics, but I'm hearing more of these alt writers, for example. If you could take a look at a couple of my videos, I did interview two of them. You know, they were gracious people during the interview, at least, and you know, we've never had real dust ups, but you know, it's created this white backlash, and I was watching some analysis today from a YouTuber named Sargon of Akkad, who's a British liberal. Yeah,
right.
and you know, if you're going to talk about big YouTubers right now, I mean, you can't leave him out. Where he actually brought clips of some of these white supremacists that were, you know, white supremacist theorists, that were saying, yeah, this is the perfect environment for people to you know, basically all we have to say is, you know, guys, I mean, you can always come hang out with us. I mean, well, you're one of us. We have common values with us. That's what these people are saying. My counterpoint to both multiculturalism and white nationalism / white supremacy is that we too often emphasize the words Judeo-Christian in the you know, on the conservative side. What I think is more appropriate is that we be more specific. We're a country based on British parliamentarism. Some of it is yes, based in Christian thought, but it's a very specific type. I mean, it's not the same as the values of Catholic Spain or secular France. It's a very different stream. The rights in our Constitution were outlined with a dramatically different blueprint. And we don't emphasize that because possibly because we don't want to be identified with Britain. It goes against the arc of our history in our classes. But if we did, and there's this Professor Jordan Peterson now who's kind of emphasizing it. He's saying, this is the society where it's almost like we give people like a starter kit where they can be what they want as regards to their culture. You can be a Chinese American, fully eat Chinese cuisine, sell your products, whatever you want to say. I mean, this I believe is a country where you can be true to your culture. Multiculturalism, in my opinion, as an educational value, is no culturalism. You have to have an anchor, in my opinion, as far as what the values are, and you cannot necessarily reconcile the values of a state like Iran and a country like Russia. Hypothetically, if you had two students, one is Russian and one Iranian in your class, they'll have a couple commonalities between them. I mean, they're both countries that they love tea, but in one of them you drink a ton of vodka, and in another one you can't even possess vodka. You can go to prison. And for me to say that now is considered an issue because we're talking about stereotypes or whatever. Even though apparently you can stereotype Russians all you want now, we're really talking about. I mean, we're getting into the freedom of speech issue. There's a couple questions here about physical safety. If you want to talk about that, do you think that it's really an issue now? I mean, I've seen other schools around the country, not that I know about your school, but where people are genuinely in both the kids and the teachers are in fear of being attacked on a daily basis. Do you know of such issues?
Well, the problem, I mean, I feel like whenever I talk about the issue of physical safety in schools, I feel like I'm an old fart, right? And I'll tell you why I feel like I'm an old fart, because, when you complain about kids, like, oh, they don't follow authority, they're disobedient, they're rude, and blah, 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 and where are their parents? I feel like these are complaints that everyone has had about children across millennia, okay? So sometimes I feel silly in that sense. But then there are times when it really does become an issue of physical safety, disobedience, for example, when it's gotten to that point. This is what I mean. The reason why I say that, it's not even necessarily so much the students, but the administration. They just have no teeth. They just cannot enforce. We don't even, look, I will tell you of something that happened to me. I had a student this last year. I'll tell you two stories. First story, when I was new to the system, supposedly teachers in my school system are allowed to confiscate phones if they are out. In other words, you are supposed to keep your phone away. If I see your phone out, I can grab your phone and put it on top of my desk, return it to you at the end of class, or give it to security to have your parents pick it up, okay? Now, the student had been disobedient for several days, and so I finally decided to confiscate the phone. When I did, the student grabbed me by my wrist, refused to let go. Another teacher had to yell at him from across the room in order for him to let me go. Now, no one thought to call security. I had to ask the other teacher in the room to call security, okay? So there was no protocol set in place as to a student getting aggressive, physically aggressive with the teacher. No protocol set in place as to what to do, okay? That was number one. Number two, Parents were not called. In fact, I was blamed for the incident. I should not have grabbed his phone. I had no right to grab his phone, even though the union made sure that in the contract it says that we are allowed to confiscate phones. All right, it is part of the school code of conduct. Okay, so that was number two. Then number three, I was actually told that I needed to go see a therapist because I was too emotional about the topic. Now tell me if, as a new teacher, I would feel at all safe in that type of environment after that took place. Of course I wouldn't feel safe, okay? That was during one of my first years in the public school system. Then I had another incident with another student, this time where, just consistently, disregarding the rules in the classroom, then it got to the point where she was like rolling her eyes at me and just being rude and being nasty. And then, so she decided that she was going to take her complaints about me to administration. She did. So we ended up having to go to the counselor, and the counselor mediated a meeting between the student and myself. Okay. Now, I didn't know anything about the student's background besides the fact that she is an ESOL student. I knew nothing, okay, about her background. It turns out that the student was released on probation, basically was in jail the first semester, was on probation the second semester, and was actually recognized as one of the MS-13 leaders in our school. Okay? Now, when did I find out about this? I found out after the meeting. I was not told at the beginning of the semester about her background at all. Was not warned. Nothing. Okay? So here I was, a teacher, enforcing the rules pretty diligently in my classroom to make sure that everyone was in check. She was rebelling against me. I was having major problems with her. And she's a gang member? That's an issue of physical safety. That's a huge issue of physical safety. No, I don't feel safe. And a number of teachers in my school don't feel safe. We don't. And it's because the education does not have any teeth. None whatsoever.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered my last question about the gang activity, and we're like drifting back, and I'm going to shift gears, and then we should probably close because it is getting late. But there's this issue. Why is gang activity such a huge issue with these immigrant communities, and not just the Salvadoran and who, by the way, I do know a number of Salvadorans in my area, and there's a lot of them that are, they're very ambitious people. One of them I know started his own trucking business and owns property here. I'm not sure if he's legal or not. I'm kind of like not broaching the topic, but but there's normal people. But the issue with why is there gang problems is you had some of these people. Let's say during the Obama era, there were those what do they call it, the DACA or the DARP or the Dream people,
right.
And they came in unaccompanied minors, and when they congregate, who is the guiding moral authority in their circle? Well, there isn't one. So then you get these groups, and it's horrendous. I've seen stories in Virginia, in Long Island, and in states I didn't know that were really an issue for this, where people are just getting slaughtered like hogs or something.
Right.
And it's part of that gang culture. It's getting fostered by the absence of a real any compass. I mean, if your parents were around, I think it would be a mitigating factor if your parents were able to discipline you, possibly. We can't say for sure. If they were belonging to a church, hypothetically, and I'm not advocating for religion, but in this context, I think it would make
a structure and a moral foundation.
I mean, being realistic, we were brought, and this happens, by the way. in Europe and possibly in Minneapolis, for example, with the Somali community. It's the same idea. So we're not talking about being racist here. If the same thing were happening with masses of people immigrating here from Romania, which is what's happening in England, yes, you would be getting criminal gangs. It doesn't matter what race it is, because there's an absence of a real community anchor. By the way, I mean, I think we discussed it one time, in brief, because it's taken a while for us to get this whole thing together. But this was how Irish criminalism happened in the United States, and until the Catholic Church had to make like a real effort to get it under control and do some, like, a lot of community organizing of the real type, not like the political type, and
Right.
and social services and things like that, and same thing with Italian communities and
Right.
whatnot. So hypothetically that could happen with this Salvadoran community, but not with the paradigm that you're talking about in the schools.
No.
And I think we've drawn a bleak picture of the education industry in this country. So we're going to touch one more topic, and then I think we should break. These Confederate monuments. You speak as a person who's not obviously a daughter of the Confederacy, which is a real organization.
Right.
It's still a real organization, and I think people that draw a heritage line back towards a group, I would never tell somebody and I've dealt with personally, I'll deal with my own example later, but what's your opinion? I mean, do you think that this is going to erase important lessons of history, or do you think that these are real symbols of oppression that are impacting the state of mind of the minorities in question?
All right. When it comes to these statues, I uh, I recently became conflicted. So when I first started out, when it became an issue in the beginning, I really did feel that they should not be removed. I remember seeing one actually outside of the courthouse, outside of a courthouse, and I was surprised by it. I was like, oh, and I was like, I did not know that, like X, Y, and Z happened here with the Confederate Army. I felt like, I love history to begin with. So I appreciated the monument for what it was. I didn't see it as a hate symbol. It maybe because I'm not Black. I mean, I don't know. But I didn't see it as that, and so I was sad when they removed that monument from in front of the courthouse. I really was. But many people in my community celebrated the removal. So in the beginning, I was very much against it, and now I'm a little bit conflicted. And the reason why I'm conflicted is because they're saying that a lot of these statues were erected during the Jim Crow era and during the Civil Rights era, that they were not erected after the Civil War took place. So they're not really monuments, like historical relics, let's say. They're monuments, to remind Blacks of what their place was at that time. You know what? I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about why these monuments were built, then we need to go actually dig up that history. I don't want to see just the graph as to when the majority of these monuments were built. I want to know the history behind, who advocated, putting up these monuments, who advocated putting up these statues, and what was their position? Like, why did they want these statues placed where they were? Why did they select the people that they chose? I want to know all about all that. But in terms of like freedom of speech and erasing history, I do think it is problematic when we decide to, I don't know if we're erasing history. I mean, what are we trying to do? Are they trying to rectify history? Are they, what is the goal here? That's the problem that I'm having. What is the goal? Okay, so we get rid of all these statues. What did that accomplish? I'm not sure if they're clear about what their end goal is, which is why I have a problem.
Are you erasing history? Are you silencing? What are they doing? I don't understand it. And so that's why I find it to be now very problematic. I don't see it as a symbol of hate. A symbol of hate is an action, like an actual action. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't. The problem is that we're not actually having conversation. They're dictating to us how we're supposed to feel about these monuments. I should be afraid of them. I should hate them. I should want to see them destroyed. Telling me how to feel about something is not a conversation. Okay, it's not a discussion. That's why I say it's freedom of speech issue. That's why I say it's erasure of history. It's trying to whitewash, right? Whitewash our history. Because we're not having an open and honest dialogue, for example, about who Robert E. Lee is, what he actually said, who Lincoln is, what he actually believes, what why we went to war against each other, the Union and the Confederacy. We're not getting into all these really important details. We just want to whitewash it, or we just want to put a big fat label and say it was all about slavery, when in fact that is not the case. We're not having these complex conversations. I really feel it's because we've dumbed down our population, that the only thing they can respond to is emotion, which sucks. It sucks, basically. I mean, and that's my position on it. I feel like it's very problematic because we're not having a true, open and honest dialogue about what these statues represent and why, and what would be the purpose of removing them. We're not talking about any of those things. We're not. We're just saying it's good, and that's it.
Yeah. So I think you have a very perceptive. I mean, I think that's the way most of the teachers I had would have approached it. The good teachers. Is that and my personal interpretation of what's going on is based on my reading, studies, and experience talking to people from communist countries, which is very scary in my mind. I know a lot of people from countries like Romania, some from Cuba, Russia, a lot of people, and in this case, China would be the most appropriate analogy. The Cultural Revolution was done in order to accomplish a goal where, and I don't think it's taught in public schools, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in China, what happened was that Mao took over a country that had a breathtaking history, traditional medicine, traditional philosophy, and Eastern philosophy. Even if you don't know, it's pretty easy to understand. It's pretty different from our culture.
Right.
And what he did was say, this stuff, all these ethics, the Chinese regard for elderly, for example, and for teachers, that has to go out the window, because I need to concentrate as much authority into as small of a pocket, which is mine. And he engaged in this campaign where he demonized all these people that could be possible voices of dissent and alternative views. And he was destroying actual Chinese artifacts, especially Tibetan artifacts, if you want to get specific about it. But really all of Chinese artifacts. And this is, I believe, a very sinister plot. I could share with you a video of a Russian defector that explains this all, Yuri Bezmenov. He explains the whole process. You probably will not enjoy it. Okay, so you have an idea of what I'm talking about, and and the issue here is, we're talking about the Confederacy. That was a dark period of our history where, remember, hundreds of thousands, I think it was millions of people ended up dying both of war and disease in order to preserve the Union or rend it apart. but it was not the first attempt of a state to secede from the Union. And you know, there's possibility that could happen again for different reasons. You know, there's a real issue here where people, I believe this is going towards that article from the beginning. They want it to be about controlling communication, controlling the flow of information. I mean, I don't dispute. I would like there to be less communists in America, but I don't think that the best way to accomplish that is by limiting freedom of speech and expression. And you know, it makes me and I can tell you, you know, I'm kind of getting on my own personal business here, but somebody, we have the Holocaust in our family, in my opinion, is you know, it's a very important topic. However, there is a massive you know, overemphasis on it. I've written an article where I say that we should focus on, as a religion, 5,000 years of history, where we pick the worst 12 to focus on. Why not focus? I mean, I read last year the book of Jeremiah. Some people tell me, you know, the people that are in the religious community, they say, you should shut up a little about it. I mean, there's other books, you know, they're kind of like flipping the script on me, but I'm like, you know, there's a lot of things you can focus on that are not and actually Jeremiah is a bleak topic, but it's a different one. You, you cannot focus exclusively. It's Snoop Dogg, even last year, he said, we have to stop making so many movies about slavery, which I thought, I was kind of surprised when he said it.
Because it keeps people focused on the past. It keeps people like entrenched in the past. It really does. It's like, I feel like I sound so callous when I say you need to get over it and move on. You know, there is after a certain point you have to let go. But I don't know why. Why do we engage as a society so much? Why are we so focused on slavery? Why?
Well, the reason I believe, and you know, you could disagree or you know, take a different viewpoint on it, but by using these issues, slavery, you could use the Vietnam War, or in the case of the Asian communities, the Japanese detention camps. Is by this way you can create these wedge groups, and in the Democratic Party, they find ways to, you know, kind of manage them from the top. Using their aggravation and you know, their grievances from the past, and I think the Republicans do it in other ways, but the bottom line, and I think we should move to conclude. I'll give you a last word, by the way.
Sure.
I think that we're kind of seeing, and this is an educator, Esperanza, who, you know, she's seeing this from the front lines. I mean, I'm somebody, I sit at a desk, I look at springs and things like that, and they don't give me no guff, and I don't feel any threat from them. But this is somebody, I mean, you know, I've talked about my own issues with my own workplace, which are, they pale in comparison to what she's dealing with. And I think that people should take heed of what these people are talking about. The fact that she cannot reveal her identity, and there's a number of different parties that would, you know, they'd be very anxious not to have a teacher speak out about them if it were known where she belonged to, and let's not even get into that. But the fact that we have to take these precautions to talk about it, I feel, is just it's a peephole onto the condition of this entire country. So the floor is yours, Esperanza.
Well, I'm happy that you know, I'm happy to be able to talk and share my experiences. You know, I mean, I remember being in the first grade and looking at my teacher and admiring her so much and loving her so much, and that was when I decided that I wanted to be a teacher. I've never strayed from that, you know, goal, I guess, of wanting to be an educator.
I love my students, and they really are like my children. And when I say that I love my students, I love each and every single one. So I'm dedicated to their success. Um, I am truly loyal to education, to what it means, you know, to be knowledgeable, to instill in my students a love of learning. And so I really approach my job not as a job per se, but it's my mission, you know, to help others. And this is how I do it, you know, is by working with children. And um, but another part of my job is to help my students think critically, right? And I do hope that I am fulfilling that part of my mission, to help my students think critically about the issues that we're facing today in society, right? So when they see, you know, Confederate statues being brought down, they ask themselves, you know, really important questions about, well, who are these people who want it down, and why, and, you know, what is the purpose, what is the end goal, you know, what does our Constitution say about freedom of speech, and what does it mean to have freedom of speech? What responsibilities do we have towards each other? Not just rights, but responsibilities that we have towards each other. Um, when we live in the society that where we have all these freedoms, right? Um, so I mean that's an important part of my job too, and I hope that I'm doing it well. I want to get better at it, and I think that, you know, other educators as myself who are focused on helping our students think, you know, in a time of really, I mean, this feels pretty chaotic, this time period that we're living in right now. To provide that foundation and critical thinking skills. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping to give my students. So I'm happy that you know, asked me some questions about my job and my thoughts about what's happening today. Um, and you know, I'm glad that you have people that you're talking to on a regular basis. I don't feel like right now, like you said, people could speak freely, and it's great to have that opportunity to finally speak my mind.
Okay, so I think we're going to conclude here. Esperanza, you can stick around. We'll talk off air. This has been the Troll Tribune with Ramon, Bold Like a Leopard. If you know somebody, or you want to, you know, enjoy this quote unquote safe space, because it's not really a safe space. You're kind of taking a risk here, right? Um, if you know somebody like that, just send me a comment or something, email. There's contact information below, and you know, let's explore the topic. So have a good night, everybody, and God bless America.
Thank you.